Yeah, your Little House on the Prairie story reminded me of my childhood. We came from humble beginnings, and uh, our plan was we would buy a awful dilapidated small house. We would
Mm.
move into it, we'd fix it up, and we would only get it done the day the realtor was coming to list it. And it would be completed at that final hour, and then we would buy a bigger dilapidated house,
Yeah, yeah.
move into it. I didn't see finished drywall, until I was probably 14 or 15.
Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius, conversation with introspective perspectives and pithy points of view. Here are your hosts, my friends, Max and Marty.
I think that's Mark and Mike.
Yeah, whatever.
Ramsey!
Marshall, I brought books today.
Oh, Lord.
I
I
know.
believe that's about 1,782 pages.
You know what? Possibly. I don't know.
That's a lot of book.
Well, it's something that I've been thinking about for a while, and I had a book club meet, and it had everything to do with the stuff that we've been talking about over time. So I tried to sort of put together an outline, and I'm just gonna share some excerpts, share some thoughts, and you're going to probably have reactions that are going to be better than whatever I've got thinking in my head right now. So let me start with a couple phrases that I bet you've heard before. Kaizen.
Yes. The Japanese continuous improvement idea.
Yes, always improving, right? And in fact, you and I have put together teams, CITs, continuous improvement teams. We've done that for a very long time, helping organizations improve.
Yes, we did that. We named them that because no one could pronounce Kaizen.
Right. That's exactly right. Well, let me give you another one that we struggle to pronounce. And I only know about it. I'm not old enough to have seen the commercials, I don't think, but it was used in a U2 song that I love. Vorsprung der Technik. It was Audi's. Oh, so this is new to you too. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I haven't heard that one. Yeah.
It's a classic line of commercials that Audi had in the I guess 70s, I think.
Right.
And it was an old slogan of theirs, but they brought it back out to sort of remind people that, hey, we're German engineering. You may have forgotten, but we're German engineering, and it means progress through technology.
Ooh.
Is this sounding similar? A little bit similar.
Yes.
We had a coworker who would actually get his clients to chant. I can't imagine ever doing this, but he would get them to chant, good, better, best, never let it rest. Just stunning that he was able to achieve that. I don't know if there's any other examples that like immediately come to your mind where, as a society, companies, you might think about Bill Clinton using, Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow, the Fleetwood Mac song, in all of his campaign stops as sort of like the theme song. But he progress, progress, progress. We are all about improvement.
Oh, yeah. No, the only thing that comes to mind is Morgan Freeman in the Shawshank Redemption. Get busy living or get busy dying.
Oh, so there's another good one. I have, in fact, my coach, he would say, resting is rusting.
Ooh, resting.
Great.
Rusting. Oh, that is really good.
So here's the question that has been bothering me. Why do any of this? And I started, really, really thinking about that. You can still live if you're not progressing. Companies can still function if they're not, always constantly improving. I think maybe it's a survival technique, but let me give an example from the ancients. People will talk, scholars will talk about the Greek miracle, and it mainly centered around Athens, but there was this period of, I don't know, like maybe 200 years where like everything happened. Architecture developed, philosophy developed, math was discovered in ways that it had never been discovered before. What we now call science really became like a thing, sort of rational inquiry into this world. we could talk about, I mean, I think there were changes in agriculture. Set aside all the literary changes where they were developing plays, tragedies, and comedies, and then democracy and the ability to have like a two-way, conversation politically as a nation, as a city group. All of that happened in about 200 years. And if you look at that, I've heard people compare it to, like, say, the Egyptians. The Egyptians, their civilization lasted much, much longer than that 200-year period. Like I think for thousands of years, there was an Egyptian civilization that was fairly static. Like, the pyramids were still being built in different phases of the centuries that the Egyptian civilization lasted. There wasn't a ton of change compared to this huge swell in the Greek areas. Part of it's just timing. I'm not saying that there's like something special about the Greeks racially or ethnically necessarily, but they began trading across the Mediterranean, and they were trading with the Phoenicians, who developed the alphabet. So they bring the alphabet back, and just all sorts of things were happening. But man, this explosion in, let's say, 200 years of all these different things. And again, why? Why did they have such an explosion? So I'm going to, if you'll bear with me, I'm going to read you a very short excerpt from the day and age of the Greeks that I think will explain this. And this is the Iliad. It's a book kind of about the Trojan War. It's set during the Trojan War. It has lots of amazingly, X-rated war battle scenes. But it's a book about honor. It's a book about honor. And so here's an example. These two fighters meet in the middle of a battle, and they sort of in Homer's world, they would announce themselves to each other. And so he says, "Who are you?" And this gentleman Glaucus says, "Hippolochus fathered me, I'm proud to say. He sent me off to Troy, and I hear his urgings ringing in my ears. Always be the best, my boy, the bravest, and hold your head up high above the others. Never disgrace the generation of your fathers. They were the bravest champions born in Corinth, in Lycia far and wide. There you have my lineage. That is the blood I claim, my royal birth." And so he makes this claim, always be the best. He says, that's what my father taught me. And he says, do it so that you can hold your head up high above the others, excel beyond the others, and don't disgrace your fathers, your ancestors. That's it. Like that's why he's doing what he's doing, is so that he can be the best and excel above all others and not disappoint the people he came from. There's the answer in a nutshell. I guess I'll stop there and let you respond, because I know I just did word vomit times 10. But what do you think of that?
Well, I think it's a much better answer than, well, I'm a Scorpio. That's true. Much better answer. I like pina coladas and long walks in the rain, and his answer is much better. At the same time, I'm also thinking about like if I'm picturing sending my daughter off to first grade, and going, listen, you're descended from multiple generations of people who have excelled.
Right.
And what you do today in school reflects on all those previous generations and our family, our ancestors. And so good luck with that.
Yeah.
That's a tremendous, I don't know if I would call it burden, but it's a tremendous, well, let's go with responsibility, tremendous responsibility to uphold not just your behavior, but that it reflects on the lineage of your ancestors.
Sometimes at the expense of yourself, right? Because I think of all the car dealers you and I have worked with over the years, and that name is on the sign. Dad's name, grandpa's name, great grandpa's name is on the sign. And I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I wanted to be fill in the blank. I've heard a million different versions of this, but I put that aside because I didn't want to disappoint the family. Now, some people hear that and say, oh, what a tragedy. But I'm just here to tell you, I think that there's something to that, to say, I am upholding the family legacy. There is some glory here, some honor worth giving. And I'm going to do that. So I think you're onto something there, with the first grader getting the burden. I think there's immigrant families who do that, right? Go make us proud. Go make us proud.
Yep. Yeah. Your great grandfather was a doctor. His father was a doctor.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And we're expecting big things from you as well.
That's exactly right.
And you make a good point. I remember in 08 when we had the a lot of dealerships were shut down and things like that during the big recession. I remember at a little Chevy store, and they also had Cadillac. And they, wasn't a big part of their business. They sold less than 5 a month. But I remember GM took the Cadillac franchise away from the Chevy store. And I remember talking to the owner, and he was devastated.
Yeah.
And it didn't make sense to me at first. And then he said, I'm third generation. My grandfather started with Cadillac. My father had Cadillac, and I'm the generation to lose it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, I never thought of that way. And he lawyered up and spent some money and managed to get it back.
Good for him.
Yeah, with none of it made business sense. It was yeah, he may never recoup all the money he spent in lawyer fees in his Cadillac sales, but he didn't want to let the generational piece of this die. And
well, so
it wasn't
brought
going
that
to die
up.
on his watch, at least.
Right. And I think that's where this conversation, sort of where I wanted to take it, was, the making of business sense, because sometimes that's, first off, I'm not saying that glory is always the thing we're supposed to pursue and that should motivate us, blah, blah, blah. But I would say that that's a much stronger motivation than what eventually happens, which is a motivation by maybe you could say wealth. And it's a really tricky slope. If you think about this kind of weird, but if you think about another Homeric work, another Greek inspired piece of art, whose name I just suddenly forgot. What's the Coen brothers film? Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Yeah. So Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, sort of based on the Odyssey. But there's that scene where I think they're lying in bed at night, or maybe outside at night, and they're talking about what they'd do if they had money. And one of them says, I'd go buy, some property. He says, you ain't no kind of man until you got land. Yep. Ain't no kind of man until you got land. Now that's an honor issue, right? He's talking about, my personal dignity is at stake. I don't exist unless I become one of those gentlemen, because that's what a gentleman was. A gentleman was somebody who had land. They could vote, they could, fill in the blank. But like there's something noble about him pursuing that. And I've heard, I think it was the son of the founder of Chess Records. I think it was Chess, talking about as he grew up in the business, and he was the one that really, I'm probably butchering this business story, but he basically was the one who pursued blues music and R&B sounds. And he remembered I think it was Muddy Waters, like coming to the house when he was young, and Muddy Waters pulls up, and he's a self-made man. He's done well for himself, and he pulls up and he's wearing like the most outlandish costume you've ever seen. His car is this ridiculous color, and it's huge, and it's like there was that was honor, right? That was, I made it. And now we're tiptoeing ever so closely to well, when is enough? And I'll give one final example of how this plays out is the Little House on the Prairie books.
Right.
If you've ever read them, if you ever watched Michael Landon on TV, the Landon show, is just a little part of the story. If you read all the books in sequence, I think 2 of them happen in the same place. They're all set in different little houses or little cabins or what have you. And the reason is Dad was never satisfied. He kept trying to find new places going further and further west. He just wouldn't give up. And Alexis de Tocqueville in his, basically writing as a contemporary of the Michael Landon character, I guess you could say, he came over from France and studied us. We've talked about it on the podcast before. And he said he just could not believe how restless the Americans were. Like they were just never satisfied, always needing more, always wanting more, whether it was space, land, wealth. It was like something had a switch of a flip of a switch in our country because of all this land we had. And it was like everybody could make it. Well, let's all try to make it. And they all just started, a relentless pursuit that we're probably still going through today. So, always restless is maybe like the negative side of the sword. If this is a 2-edged sword, honor for your family, that's amazing. But when it turns into I'm never satisfied, I need more, and it's just plain old materialism or just winning, period, and that's all you can say about it. Like it's probably not as attractive, probably not as healthy for us.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, your Little House on the Prairie story reminded me of my childhood. We came from humble beginnings, and our plan was we would buy a awful dilapidated small house. We would move into it, we'd fix it up, and we would only get it done the day the realtor was coming to list it. And it would be completed at that final hour, and then we would buy a bigger dilapidated house.
Yeah.
Move into it. I didn't see finished drywall until I was probably 14 or 15.
You did, like, this happened.
Oh yeah, no, this was Dad and Mom's plan. This was, yeah. Then we sold that one and bought a bigger, even worse house, and fixed that house up, and that was just this, yeah, as you said, that this relentless pursuit of, okay, how do we get ahead in life, and what are the skills that we have? But it was always with, can we get better? Can we do more? Right? Can we move forward?
And so, I'm hearing us talk about this, and I'm thinking very consciously about all the clients we're helping who want to improve. I mean, that's why they hired us. Mm-hmm. So I want to make it really clear. I'm not saying you shouldn't improve. It's sort of, we're really talking about motivations. Mm-hmm. What is the thing that's motivating you? And something that's happened, this is my next quote from a little book called Leisure, the Basis of Culture by Joseph Pieper. He wrote this, I think, in the 50s, and he essentially was noticing, sort of after the war, how much work was sort of taking over, that we were all working. And he said, listen, remember that Greek miracle? Well, he doesn't really talk about the Greek miracle, but he says the ancients, what they were doing was trying to not work. And his point being, they didn't even have a word for work. They had a word for leisure, for restful contemplation, for taking time to think about important things and come to some conclusions. They called that skole. And we've talked about that before on the podcast. He said their word for work was askole. In other words, it was anti-leisure, without leisure. And everybody had to do it. You had to put food on the table, but this was not the goal. And when I say leisure, I don't mean, sitting around the house, surfing the internet. I mean thinking, actively engaged in thinking and deciding what's important, and contemplating, some things about, like, what's really important in life. And so he's got this quote where I can't believe he was this smart, but he noticed that they were starting to use the term knowledge worker, and he was like, ugh, knowledge worker. Like, if you're trying to come up with knowledge, you shouldn't be working. You shouldn't be distracting yourself with all this work. You should be contemplating. And so one of his ways he gets his point across is, he said, is there a sphere of human activity, one might even say of human existence, that does not need to be justified by inclusion in a 5-year plan and its technical organization? Is there such a thing or not? The inner meaning of the concepts intellectual work and intellectual worker points to the answer no. Man, from this point of view, is essentially a functionary, an official, even in the highest reaches of his activity. Like, that's all it is. It's just you going through the motions, coming up with yet another plan, yet another venture to take yourself to new levels, but you haven't really done any contemplating, and you're nothing beyond just that plan. And he obviously saw that as, how sad to be just, a cog in a machine, and it's a machine of your own making. So that's a problem.
That is a problem. I think about, the people that we work with, and how they tell us that, when they get their inspirational ideas and things like that, and it's in those rare moments when there's quiet.
Exactly.
And their quiet could simply be wearing their headphones while they're mowing the lawn.
Often the case.
Yeah, that, just standing in the shower.
Yep.
I'm not, I can't take calls and scroll on my phone in the shower for the most part. And all of a sudden, it's in those moments of rest, of contemplation, that the ideas come, right?
Yeah.
The next step presents itself, and people, yeah, this is crazy, but I thought of this while I was mowing the lawn.
So there's the irony, right? Because that's what allowed the Greek miracle to happen. All the progress that they had happened because of the skole. It happened because of the time of reflection and contemplation. And part of what they were reflecting on, I think, was indeed, I want to honor the legacy I've been given. I want to bring honor to the honor I've received. But that's a motivation that allowed the progress. Mm-hmm. If the motivation is the progress itself, or something silly that you're chasing that's just not worth it, like money, it certainly won't fulfill, and it certainly won't last. That's the scary part of this.
Well, every time we've ever done the exercise, what does money mean to you? Yeah, we ask people, take a Post-it note, answer this question: what does money mean to you? Because we work in a very competitive, we do work with high performers, highly competitive people, and they're always like, it's all about the money, and they say it without even thinking. But when you make them pause and think, they go, all right, so what does money mean to you? And we get the most profound stories.
It's stunning.
Of I don't want my generation that I'm raising, I don't want them to live in the manner that I lived.
Yeah.
I want security. I want to be able to weather any storm, and it just, you get all these great storms, right?
Freedom.
Yeah. You hear freedom a lot, and then you have to ask, okay, what do you mean by freedom? And everybody's got a kind of a different definition of it. So exactly. once you get past that surface answer of, yeah, we're all here for the money, it's like, all right, but what does that symbolize for you? And all of a sudden you find their motivations.
So let me, I've got one last thing, and we can sort of wrap this up, but I'm going to close with this, and I hope this doesn't come across as preachy to anybody, but I could not help but make the connection. Glaucus from Corinth. There's a couple books in the Bible written to the Corinthians. Paul writing to the Corinthians, who, it's a Greek speaking Roman colony in Paul's day. But Paul was definitely classically educated. He would have understood a lot of the concepts that we're talking about, I think. And he wrote to the Corinthians, who had, it was a wealthy area. They had a lot of money. They had a problem with quite a few different patterns of behavior. A big one being sexual deviancy. We'll just call it that. And And Paul's writing to these people who understood the concepts that we're talking about. And I should add that when Glaucus was giving his little speech, there's a Greek word he's using that I'm terrible at pronouncing these, but I think it's aristai or aristai. And it was basically this idea that you would excel and stand out. Usually it meant like, battle, some amazing moment in battle. And the Homer's epics are filled with, these amazing scenes where somebody just does something so heroic. And it's related to the other word for excellence, arete, which is about, reaching your potential and striving to, be the best that you can be. Very similar to all the stuff we've talked about, Kaizen, Vorsprung der Technik. But here's, it played out in the Olympics. The Olympics was another example of excelling. So here's Paul bringing all of that together. And this will be my final thought here. He says, do you not know that in a race, all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, their trophy, but we an imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, but I discipline my body and keep it under control. And then he goes on to talk about, that he wants to reach the goal. He wants to die and be a part of, God's kingdom and have eternal glory and participate in eternal glory. So if you're looking to up the ante, you've got money, you've got honoring your family, and then there's something up here that you have to consider, going beyond yourself. Right. Something that lasts. And the Bible would argue, Paul would argue, why not go ahead and go all the way and make it something that lasts forever, like make it something eternal, that's your motivation. So that's my final word.
No, that's amazing. The part that really struck me was that you would receive this perishable award.
Yeah.
And so all this stuff we're working towards, be it the house, the cars, the leather couch, and all the fancy stuff, at some point it's all going to be gone.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to bulldoze your house and build a different one. Right? The car's going to rot. Everything is going to go away. What remains are the stories, the legend, the accomplishments that personify who you were as an individual.
Yeah, and it usually seems to go back to we talked about dignity. It's the human beings around you, right? They're each worth something. They're these eternal souls that are worth something. They count. They matter. We're going to be talking about that in a workshop that we're doing in the future. Mm-hmm. And that has to mean something, right? It has to mean something that we know that there's something different about the humans around us compared to the things around us. So I'm done. I'll shut up now.
Fantastic. Good stuff. We covered 4 books in less than 30 minutes. That was pretty darn impressive. So you got a little sampler platter of literature. Right. Nicely done. And, we do know somebody in our lives who's not working for the money because he does all our announcing for free.
That's exactly right.
It's his bigger purpose. We should probably tell him someday. So take it away, Mr. Wolf.
And there you have it. Another session of contemporaneous extemporizing from Mark and Mike. I know it's redundant, but consider who we're talking about. As always, feel free to share the ideas you heard here. No rights are reserved, no permissions needed. Thanks. See you next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius.
That's good enough.